I am a career law clerk at the New Hampshire Supreme Court, where I've been for about 21 years. And prior to that, I litigated employment cases for about 12 years in San Francisco. And I've been judging at the state level for somewhere between 5 and 10 years, but I couldn't tell you how many years. We all kind of meld into one, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. Professor Chambers, you have the floor.
Thank you. I am Hank Chambers, a law professor down here at the University of Richmond, and I've been at this for a couple of decades. I look forward to the conversation this morning.
Gotta remember to unmute. It's the pandemic era, you know. Good morning. My name is Barry Anderson. I'm an associate justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court. Long history with this program, not only as a judge, but also years ago as a coach, and that gives me some appreciation for all the stress you're under. Been there, done that, and you're going to have a great experience, and I know we're looking forward to it. The floor is yours, Ann.
Thank you. And would you all please introduce yourselves?
My name is Reed Andrews.
My name is Sydney Einen.
My name is Tyler Horstman, and our teacher is Mr. Dickman.
Wonderful. So I'm going to read the question, and when I'm done, you can begin your presentation. We are in Unit 4, and this is question 2. Members of Congress are not only legislators, but they are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of the public officers. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory powers? Explain the differences, if any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. Which power, in your opinion, is more significant? How effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight powers?
Madam Chairman, while at times Congress has been able to use its investigatory powers effectively, it has also been limited by partisanship, scandal-mongering, and political theater. Since the formation of the U.S. government, partisanship has played a large role in the use of Congress's investigatory power. Partisan politics have impacted the Clinton impeachment hearings in 1998, and more recently, the Trump investigations of 2017 and the impeachment hearings of 2020 and 2021. Partisan politics have also prevented the further use of the investigatory power on topics such as gun violence and systemic racism. By avoiding investigations for partisan reasons, problems associated with institutional racism, such as the killing of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and the fact that Black men have a 1 in 1,000 chance of being killed by police, have not been addressed by Congress. Scandal-mongering and political theater have also limited the efficacy of the investigatory process, as seen during the McCarthy hearings, in which he used the political stage to call out communists on live television. Although in cases like Watergate, where Congress has used the power effectively in spite of partisanship, typically the lack of will, partisan politics, and negative publicity have severely limited the investigatory power.
Madam Chairman, congressional oversight is more significant in that it is the process by which Congress ensures that legislative actions are effectively implemented, while the investigatory powers provide Congress the tools to address issues when the process doesn't go as planned. While congressional oversight and investigation aren't mentioned in the Constitution, they are considered inherent in the legislative process and are implied in Article 1, Section 1, which states that all legislative powers are vested in Congress. Through oversight powers, Congress monitors and reviews both actions and nominees of the executive and judicial branches, ensuring that legislative actions are carried out in accordance with the law. On the executive side, we can view successful congressional oversight with examples such as the Iran-Contra scandal in 1987, which began as oversight and resulted in the indictment of Oliver North and John Poindexter. On the judicial side, Congress created the U.S. Sentencing Commission to standardize sentences nationwide, resulting from increased displeasure, with judges imposing widely differing sentences for similar crimes. Investigation then acts as a tool for when oversight power is not used successfully, when systems do not run as anticipated or legal action is suspected, and an investigatory committee is formed to look into the matter, as seen with the Keating Five in 1989, when 5 senators were inappropriately involved with an investigation of the Lincoln Savings and Loan scandal.
Madam Chairman, the effectiveness of congressional oversight must be considered on a case-by-case basis, and that the government oversight process enables Congress to determine the degree to which policies are being properly implemented by the executive and judicial branches. When problems arose with FEMA's inability to act quickly after Hurricane Katrina and the 2005 disaster, oversight hearings were used to develop the Post-Katrina Emergency Management Act of 2006. This ensured that FEMA had the resources and ability to respond more effectively, as seen recently in response to the emergency declarations in Texas in February. In addition, oversight hearings enable Congress to monitor and adjust to changing situations, as seen when Fed Chairman Jerome Powell testified about the impact of the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package on March 24th. This testimony allows Congress to then address appropriations and policies aimed at either maximizing employment or focusing on policy or price stabilization. Finally, while the majority of congressional oversight focuses on the executive branch and its agencies, these powers extend to the judicial branch as well, and it enables Congress to consider nominations, impeachment, and the creation of new seats on the federal judiciary as recommended by the Judicial Conference of Congress in 2018. We are now ready for your follow-ups.
Thank you so much. So my question is this: you mentioned the Watergate investigation and said that that was an example of an effective investigation. And my question is, why do you think that was effective? What made it effective?
Madam Chairman, I apologize if I interrupted you. I don't know.
You didn't. Oh,
Okay,
fine.
perfect. I couldn't hear you very well. But Madam Chairman, I would argue that it was an effective use of the investigatory powers because although it was partisan, it ended up with President Nixon, or former President Nixon, resigning from office. So I would say that it carried out its duty well.
So what made it effective was the end result?
Yes, ma'am.
And was there any way in which the investigation was conducted that differentiated it from some kind of an investigation that you think was not effective, such as the McCarthy era?
Madam Chairman, during the McCarthy hearings, when the majority was Republican, he was able to more partisanly conduct his investigations through, well, his oversight and investigations. And I believe that they found enough evidence to convict him. So possibly in comparison to the McCarthy hearings, to the Watergate scandal, there wasn't much evidence concerning whether that person was a communist, whereas they ended up finding enough evidence to clearly depict his guilt. So I believe that the investigatory process was done more efficiently in that case compared to the McCarthy hearings and McCarthy.
Thank you. I'm sorry about my video. Professor Chambers, you have the floor.
Sure. Do investigations trench too much into the Department of Justice's area?
Mr. Chairman, I do not believe that the power to investigate it entrenches too much into the Department of Justice because the Congress, although it is an implied power, although it is not concisely stated in the Constitution, using oversight and investigation, serves as a check for the judiciary and for the executive. So I would argue that it doesn't stomp on the grounds of the Department of Justice.
Okay. If Congress does find activity that they believe has been criminal, what should they do with that information?
Mr. Chairman, when Congress finds some incriminating information regarding to illegal activity, they would form an investigative committee to look into the suspected criminal activity going on, and will launch multiple hearings where many people will be subpoenaed and testify, or will be testifying. So they will attempt to find as much information about what could have possibly gone down, I guess. So that is how they use their investigative powers.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm interested in your discussion about the investigation issues here, and I'm wondering To what extent partisanship influences congressional investigations, and if it's a problem, I think it is a problem, but you respond to that. How do you ameliorate that? How do we reduce partisanship to make investigations more effective?
Mr. Chairman, obviously, especially in the recent decades, as you said, partisanship has become a huge problem within our government system, with different parties being at each other's throats and different individuals not agreeing with each other. I believe that a good way.
Mr. Chairman, to jump in and assist my colleague, I believe that nowadays in our current political environment, there is hyperpartisanship everywhere, and it can be seen in the investigatory process in many ways, in which I could go back to my original statement in that you could see them in both the Clinton impeachment hearings and the Trump impeachment or former President Clinton impeachment hearings and former President Trump impeachment hearings, in the fact that during the Clinton impeachment hearings, I agree with his defense counsel in that there were too many inconsistencies for it to be a clear case of perjury. And so I believe that at least that conviction was brought up by a partisan bias, for example.
No, but so my question is, and I think we can all find examples of excessive partisanship, and there's a long history of that actually in Congress. But what I'm wondering about, are there institutional reforms that Congress could engage in that would reduce the partisanship problem? And if any, what suggestions would you make?
I would argue that that is a difficult question in the sense that it is extremely difficult to limit partisanship because there's always going to be that divide. I believe that one way we could possibly limit partisan investigations could be more enforcing of the subpoena power, because in the past, for example, former President Trump resisted the subpoena power, and I believe during the Obama administration, his attorney general also resisted, and I think that is a huge problem. And because they're able to resist that power, could be an example of partisanship because they didn't. Or I know, for example, when I brought up the Obama administration, his attorney general, he didn't end up having to come to testify. And so I believe that a good way to maybe limit partisanship could be Congress being more enforceful, like more enforcing of the subpoenas.
What powers, if any, has Congress ceded to the executive and judicial branches?
Mr. Chairman, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if some of the ineffectiveness of Congress is related to having allowed the executive and judicial branches to intrude on its territory, and maybe Congress should look to take some of that power back. I'm wondering if you can think of any examples of that.
Mr.
Let me give you an
Chairman,
area of inquiry. For example, in the budget area, I'm just wondering if the inability of Congress to put together in a timely manner a responsive budget to the budget that the White House provides, could that be a factor?
Mr. Chairman, I would agree that the power of the purse could be an example of how the executive and judicial play a part because Congress has the power of the purse. Oh,
Okay, thank you.
I just figured out an answer.
Oh, time's up.
Sorry, guys. I'm trying to fix my computer. Thank you so much. Professor Chambers, do you want to start with giving some feedback?
Sure. Yeah, I thought the opening was real nice. It nicely laid out a distinction between investigation and oversight and what it is that Congress is supposed to do. I think you have a lot of really good examples, some very strong starts. When we got into the Q&A, of course, some tough questions came, right? In terms of figuring out where the distinctions are between investigation oversight and how well Congress can do it. You all actually made a real good case in the opening that politicization has been a real problem, and the question then becomes, how do you fix it? So I had a good conversation. Like to hear what you all were thinking, and it's good stuff. And good luck.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Professor Chambers has said. I think your opening statement was very strong, and we had a good exchange about some of those issues. You know, these are complicated topics, and it's rare that you have an investigation by Congress that is, you know, that just by the nature of the investigative work, that it always runs smoothly or that there isn't a problem. And we've had you talked about a couple of the high visibility ones, the McCarthy hearings, for example. The fact of the matter is that Joseph McCarthy probably did a lot of damage, and you correctly recognize that. On the other hand, it's also true that our nuclear secrets were in fact transmitted to the Soviet Union by way of espionage. And so it's a complicated topic that probably deserved some investigation, but not in the manner that Senator McCarthy went about it. How do you avoid that? And so that is really a great question of our time. And I'm sure that you're going to have the opportunity, as some of us shuffle off the stage, you're going to be shuffling on the stage to deal with some of these problems. That I wish you well. It was an interesting exchange, and I enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
I wanted to thank you all as well, and I agree with my colleagues. I thought your opening statement was very strong. I thought that you faltered a little bit in the question and answer, and but I think that this is a kind of a hard topic to get your hands around, because it's kind of amorphous. And I enjoyed the conversation very much, and I wish you a lot of luck going forward.